What is up, fam? I haven't seen y'all in about a week, and it feels longer, but today we're taking a break from my usual fare of late of calling bullshit on the various frauds and charlatans populating YouTube to talk about something quite different. This is my review of the Build Fitness and Nutrition Guide by Natacha Océane with Renee McGregor. Cute story. I was actually worried that this video wasn't going to be long enough to be worth doing because I was afraid that I wouldn't have that much to say about this guide, but as you can see by the TRT on that progress bar, I have a lot to say. This will be my third time reviewing one of Natacha's guides on my She Tried It series, and for the unfamiliar, She Tried It is just my series where I review fitness and or nutrition programs from the likes of the YouTubey and Instagrammy fitness guru types. So She Tried It, in this case, she meaning me and it meaning the Build Guide by Natacha Océane. And as always, there is relentless construction noise going on next door, so I'm just gonna have to power through. Apologies in advance for the noises throughout this video. Back when Build first launched, I did a poll asking you guys what you wanted to see me review next on She Tried It, and here we are, several, really a lot of weeks later. Before I jump into the review, I just want to make one point very clear, which I make every time I do videos of this sort. I am by no means telling you what to do. I am telling you what I do. If you're looking for advice and guidance in how to lose weight and get healthy and nutrition and things of that sort, I recommend you seek professional help. Don't ask some rando on YouTube. I am not qualified to answer those questions for you, and it would be straight up inappropriate for me to do so. I am merely sharing my thoughts on this particular program and my experience doing it in the hopes that it can help you make a more informed purchasing decision. I feel like that should go without saying, but trust and believe, there are always people who ask YouTubers like me to make major life decisions about their health for them, and it's kind of nuts. Natacha Océane's Build is a 12-week program with 60 different workouts in it, and it costs 60 American dollars. 60 bucks isn't cheap by any means, but one of the reasons that I have continued to purchase Natacha's programs is I feel that she consistently delivers quality as well as value for money. I mean, this basically breaks down to be $1 per workout, which is way cheaper than Soul Cycle. Look, I don't know your life. I don't know what y'all do. Furthermore, there are so many fitfluencers charging equivalent or much higher price tags just to get a PDF with Bush League basic workouts that are mostly typing and formatting issues. With Natacha, at least I feel like I've never been ripped off even a little bit. So, spoiler alert, Build, like her other programs that I have reviewed in the past, is an enthusiastic recommend. Shortly before Build, Natacha launched her Cut Reload, which I have purchased, but I have not tried. However, I have done Cut in the past, and at the time of purchasing Build, I was a little confused as to how the thesis of Build differs from the thesis of Cut or Cut Reload, and to be honest, that confusion continues. Here are some descriptions of Cut and Cut Reload that I pulled from Natacha's own website as well as her Instagram. Cut and Cut Reload promise to help you, quote, lose fat without drastically reducing your food intake so you feel motivated and strong as you get leaner. And on both programs, she teamed up with world-leading performance dietitian Renee McGregor, who works with Olympic athletes, to give you a guide for effective fat loss through research-backed training. Last descriptor for the Cut programs, a research-backed training program with a nutrition approach for fat loss results that last and protect your metabolism. Now, Build is described as something that will help you build muscle, get stronger, and increase your metabolism while staying functional, approved by world-leading performance dietitian Renee McGregor. When talking about Build, Natacha said that blending in functional training with my muscle building totally changed how I feel and move, and it's exactly why I built my program Build. So after reading through the descriptions for Cut, Cut Reload, and Build, all of the programs more or less aim to increase your metabolism by building/increasing your lean muscle mass, achieving this through functional and strength training, which in theory over time will allow you to lose body fat without having to reduce your caloric intake. So honestly, I don't think that the objective between Cut and Build is all that different, but I will say that the execution and programming is different from Build compared to Cut, as well as Natacha's other programs. I haven't done all of her other programs, but I have purchased them and I've done some of them, and I've been able to look through and see what the programming is like. In Build, it is a 5-day per week split, but it's a different type of split from Move, Cut, Home, and Cut Reload, all of which are much more traditional, I guess you could say, in terms of the way the splits are labeled. Those all lean toward a more traditional, straightforward type of split that you've probably seen before with total body days, upper body days, or upper body and core, lower body days, HIIT training for cardio, that sort of thing. Build, on the other hand, splits its 5 days of programming a bit differently. First up, there is a strength day, which I consider to be a total body day, but with a lower body focus. These workouts always begin with one of the fundamental foundational lifts, like squats, deadlifts, front squats, stuff like that, starting off with a few warm-up sets before you get into your working sets. Then within these strength day workouts, after you complete the sets for the main lift, usually back squats, but again, sometimes you'll get deadlifts or front squats or whatever else, after which you move on to the other strength movements within the workout. The second workout of each week is an upper body functional and muscle building workout. The third is a lower body functional and muscle building workout. The fourth workout is an athletic power workout. And these are pretty much full body workouts with a focus on explosive dynamic movements. So you'll be doing a lot of things like medicine ball slams and tosses and box jumps, stuff like that. And then the fifth day is just a functional full body workout. So that one is a little bit vague in the name because this entire program and really all of Natacha's programs have a huge focus on functional training. Bearing that in mind, I thought it might be helpful to include a montage of one of the functional full body workouts from Build. This is just going to be me in the gym going through the workout so you can get an idea of what these movements are like in a typical functional workout sense. What does that really mean, you know? So that is what one of the functional workout days looks like. And to be honest with you, it's not really terribly different from the types of movements that you would see in any of the other days, or in any of Natacha's other programs for that matter. She definitely has a very specific training style, and obviously her training style is very compatible with mine, which is why I keep going back to her programs. I just really enjoy training like this. It's why going all the way back to 2009, 2010, I first started getting into training with kettlebells and doing CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting, because I just really enjoy constantly varied, functional training like an athlete type of programming. Build also has 2 rest days programmed into each week. Build is very demanding, so I think going with 5 days per week and 2 rest days, or, active recovery, whatever you prefer to call it, I think that was a good way to go. Because regardless of where you are starting, if you are lifting weights appropriate for your fitness level, I do believe you're going to need that second rest day. That's the layout of the workouts in each week, as well as how many rest days you get, but you can always take more rest days if you feel like you need them, or rejudge the order of the workouts within each week, whatever floats your boat. Personally, I did both. I did not always go through the week strength, upper, lower, rest. Athletic power, functional, rest. I didn't always do it that way. At this point, I feel that I am familiar enough with Natacha's programming and her guides as a whole to feel confident that I, and probably you too, can stay on track and still have progress. Even if you're taking a more scenic, or in some cases I've taken a more accelerated route than what is indicated in the program itself. And she even suggests cutting down to just 3 or 4 workouts per week rather than the 5, if that's what you prefer and if that's more doable for you. Build does come with a PDF guide that comes separately from the workouts, and the workouts for Build are accessed through an app called Athlete. This is the same app that you use to access any of Natacha's programming guides. And in the separate PDF guide kind of explaining Build, Natacha goes into why we are focusing on building strength and functional training as a metabolism boosting / fat loss strategy. And she also gives advice on how to sort out your nutrition without actually prescribing your nutrition. So do not expect a meal plan. It seems to me that Natacha tries really hard to encourage us all to sort out our own nutrition in terms of figuring out what foods help us to feel and perform our best, whilst also not feeling like we are in an addictive cycle or a deprived state with food. There is sample menu in that PDF guide. But again, I think Natacha's whole philosophy is on healing our relationships with food, if there is any healing that needs to be done, and learning to really tune into what our individual needs are, because all of our bodies are different. And a lot of these fitfluencers who are selling meal plans aren't qualified to do so anyway. And unfortunately, there are just a ton of people out here selling glorified crash diets, Gauge Girl, because crash diets work. Of course, they're really harmful and a bad idea and not encouraged, but it's win-win for these scammers, because on the one hand, if you can't stick with it because it's a crash diet, it's not their fault that you didn't lose weight because you didn't stick with their crash diet. And then on the other hand, if you do stick with it, you're almost guaranteed to lose a lot of weight and quickly, because you're eating 1,200 calories a day and probably working out. I see these influencers selling people these guides all the time with these meal plans of extremely low calories and fairly high activity. Natacha doesn't ever do this, and that's one of the reasons I love her. I think in this guide, as well as in her others, by not giving you a meal plan or a to-eat list, she's taking a much more responsible approach. It's also a harder one because it takes quite a while to get to a point where you can actually start tuning into what your body needs to actually fuel it properly. But I've said this before, I believe in one of my other reviews for Natacha, she has much more of a teach a man to fish rather than a tell a man to eat 2 ounces of fish type of approach. Making a one-size-fits-all meal plan or nutrition guide to go with a fitness guide is illogical and frankly dangerous. Rant over. Rather than do that, the Build PDF guides you through calculating your BMR or basal metabolic rate, calculating your daily caloric needs, and gives general suggestions for basic macros distribution. That's carbs, proteins, and fats. And it also digs pretty well into identifying and addressing if you have been under eating long term. It is very similar to the content of the PDF guide that came with Cut, which also addresses macronutrients, breaking down how to estimate your caloric needs, and how to go about gradually increasing your intake if you've been in restrictive eating patterns that may have caused some metabolic slowdown. It also gets into how to actually use the workouts, explains explaining how long to rest between sets on different movements, as well as selecting your weights, which in Natacha's case is always based more on feel rather than knowing your 1 rep maxes or percentages necessarily. So she'll say things like, pick a weight that puts you 1 to 3 reps from failure at the end of every set. There is no warm-up included with the guide itself, nor in Athlete, but a few months back, Natacha did do a video on her YouTube channel showing how she likes to warm up. So I will link that below in case you might find it helpful because you're not sure what to do. I personally would more or less do the same warm-up that I had been doing in the last program I reviewed on She Tried It, which was the Women's Specialization Program from Stephanie Buttermore with Jeff Nippard. Before I get into my pros, cons, and miscellaneous, which is what I always do in She Tried It, I just want to state clearly that your experience and whatever results that you achieve with this or any fitness program or nutrition program are completely unique to you, your body, your lifestyle. This is also why I tend not to include before or after shots of myself in these videos any longer. I do think that they might be anecdotally interesting, but one, I usually just straight up forget to even take photos these days because I'm just training and doing my thing. I'm not trying to have some great transformation. 2, when I have included photos, there's always a handful of assholes bitching about what I'm wearing or the way I'm posed or God knows what else. Not to mention the perverts who have the gall to complain that I don't put my entire ass on the internet. Don't get it twisted, because I like what I see when I'm looking at me and I'm walking past the mirror. But this is why we can't have nice things, y'all. Some folks are just creeps. 3rd, and most importantly, I am not in the business of selling y'all pounds and inches. The changes in my body or lack thereof over the course of several weeks are the result of several factors: genetics, fitness level and capacity, sleep, training effort, obviously diet. When people do show before and afters, there's an implication that those results can and perhaps should be expected. Meanwhile, you can fake before and after photos that were taken in the same day, the same hour even. So yeah, no before and afters, and that is why I have said that in my last couple of She Tried It, but in case you missed those, I just wanted to say it again. Let's get into them pros. The first pro is something that I already touched on in the overview portion, and that is that warm-up sets are built in to the workout for the primary lifts on the strength days. So for example, if it's strength day and you were doing back squats, there will be, I think, 3 or 4 warm-up sets, and she gives estimates within the Athlete app where it's like shoot for 50% of the most you think you can do, shoot for 80%, whatever. I love that that's built in because that is exactly how we should be training when we're trying to build strength. You do want to gradually work up to your heavy sets, your working sets. So whether you're someone who's more of a novice who might not necessarily know that, or you're someone like me who can just be a little bit too balls to the walls, impatient in the gym, and I'm just ready to kind of get going and I might not warm up properly in the way that I should, I love that this is built into the workout, so there's no getting around it. If it's written down, I'm going to do it. So I love that the warm-up sets are there, and that's something that I had to kind of remind myself to do in previous programs like Cut that didn't necessarily include warm-up sets for fundamental strength building lifts like that. Second pro is that the programming is creative and challenging as per usual. As I said earlier, I don't want to repeat myself too much from the praise that I've given Natacha in my other reviews on her programs, but I just really love her training style. I feel like it's the best of the old in terms of classic foundational moves that we all need to be doing, but she always brings a uniqueness and creativity and twist to other elements of her workouts that make things interesting, that keep me motivated because it allows me to focus on developing skills like handstands and pistol squats and so forth. And I think she marries the best of both worlds, you know, her own training style and building uniqueness into the workouts that isn't try hard, along with the foundational traditional gym style movements that will behoove anybody who has a body. As someone with a CrossFit, O-lifting, kettlebells background, and someone who still dibble dabbles in those training modalities. I think that the athleticism and focus on developing skills in Natacha's programming, that's what keeps me from ever losing enthusiasm. I am always enjoying my training on one of Natacha's programs, and Build is no different. I think her melding of functional movements with classic gym style strength-based movements is what allows me to overcome the boredom which I have definitely faced doing some of the other programs that I've reviewed on She Tried It, all while forcing my body to adapt to new challenges beyond simple progressive overload. With Build, you are challenging balance. You're working in different planes of movements. You're working coordination, agility, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, all while you're also building strength through classic movements like push-ups, pull-ups, and deadlifts. In short, I never got bored at all with doing Build, although upper body days still try me. I hate working upper body, and I do feel like I made significant progress in terms of continuing to work on skills and building strength, which ideally means I've built lean tissue as well whilst doing this program. Last pro, which isn't really a pro, it should be under miscellaneous, but it was a pro for me, is that there was no hit day. Lord of mercy, there is no dedicated high intensity interval training day or any dedicated cardio metabolic conditioning day. So again, that should not be in pros, but it was a pro for me because not having to do hit paired with only having one dedicated upper body day to do each week in Build was ideal for TT. Let's get into cons. The first con is something that comes up in every review of Natacha's programs, and that is athlete. I have complained about athlete at length in my previous review, so I'm gonna keep this brief. The interface itself is pretty good, but the app is unstable, it crashes, it loses data, and then there are a few issues I have with the interface that I wish they would change, one of which is being unable to change the default units from metric to imperial. I'm in the US, we dumb, so it is a bit annoying to every single time I have to put in a weight to have to change it from kilos to pounds. It gets very annoying. There should be a way in settings to change that, but there's not. It seems like such an obvious fix, and here we are 2 years I've been using this app. And in those 2 years, I think there have been approximately 0 updates for Android. There even seem to be some new problems that have surfaced in Athlete where the video demos don't always load correctly. Under every single movement in every single workout, there is a video demo where you can see Natacha performing the movement. There's a problem where, particularly on the demos where Natacha only does 1 or 2 reps, which in my opinion, it would be far better to always do a minimum of 4 reps of any given movement, just so that we can get an idea of the flow. If something is a completely new movement, to see it only done twice, you're almost definitely going to need to re-loop that demo anyway. So I feel like it's just a better user experience to have at least 4 demonstrations of a given movement. But then beyond that, some of the demos don't load correctly, at least in Android. This might be an Android only problem. So I'd be at the gym and would need a demo because I wasn't sure what a movement was because I'd never done it before, or maybe the name of it is something I hadn't heard, or we call it something else here, whatever. And then I would hit the demo button and it would start in the middle of the rep, and then I would basically see 1 rep and a half, and I wouldn't really have a clear idea of what the top of the movement was and what was the bottom, like what was the start and what was the finish, which is again exacerbated by there being potentially only 2 reps shown. So if the video is for whatever reason starting late when she's already 2 seconds into the video because it's Athlete and it's f***ing up again, it just became really annoying and difficult to see some of these demos correctly. On the plus side, this is a new problem. This is something that I have never experienced, or certainly at least never noticed doing her other programs. But yeah, just when I thought Athlete couldn't get any worse, here we are. One con is that there is a section within each WOD where you can write notes, like whether you increase your weights over each set, decreased, or whatever it is. Whatever notes you want to assign to how that workout went for you, there is a field to add notes within Athlete. But ultimately, that feature isn't really useful because you can't really access those notes again easily. You have to remember the specific week and the specific workout that you might have taken notes to go find them again. There's no other place to see the notes at all, or even any indication of when you did or did not take notes during one of your workouts. So really, what's the point? They really need to add some sort of way to be able to see Here are all of the notes that I recorded throughout this program so I can actually see what thoughts or weights or whatever I was having. Because beyond that, I don't really see that tool being useful at all. Because again, if I took notes in week 6 leg day, those notes aren't useful for me unless I remember that I took those notes that day and then I go back into that workout in athlete, even the name of this app irks me, to read them again. Not only do those notes just kind of essentially go into the void, but athlete does not cross-pollinate your weights on particular movements throughout the app. In other words, I have back squatted in cut and I have back squatted in build, but athlete will not reference the max weight that I have in cut and then move it over to build once I'm doing that program or once I'm starting that program. So I either have to remember my own weights or go back into cut and find a workout the last time I did back squats to see what my max weight was. It just seems to me that since it's all one app and these are all in my app when I log in and I can see all my programs, it seems like you should be able to opt into the app doing that, but they don't got that. Then again, what would be really nice would be if athlete didn't crash all the time, so maybe we should focus on fixing that first. Moving out of critiquing athlete and issues with athlete, my next con is more about the program, and it's just an observation really that while rough percentages are given on warm-up sets in those strength workouts, in other words, shoot for 50% of the heaviest you think you can go, shoot for 70%, whatever. Once you get to the working sets, no percentage or suggestion are given. I just thought that was a bit peculiar. Now, again, general guidelines are given in the separate PDF. We talked about this earlier, choose a weight that has you 2 or 3 reps away from failure, stuff like that. But I would have found it more helpful to just have within the app, just like we have under those warm-up sets, a target percentage to estimate for the working sets. Shoot for 85% of your max, shoot for 90% of your max. Because even though that separate PDF guide does give you a general guideline for how heavy you want to go based on the rep scheme of a particular move, I'm not going to remember what it said by the time I'm in the gym. This isn't really a huge deal. I just wound up going by feel in the end. I've been training a long time, so I would more or less figure out, okay, if we're doing only 3 sets of 5, I'm going to be going pretty heavy because that's very low reps and it's not that many sets. So I know I want to probably be 85% or more of my max. But for someone who is less experienced, I feel like it would have been better to include that sort of suggestion all the way down to the working sets and not just in the warm-up sets. The next con is a critique that has come up in, I think, every single She Tried It I've ever done from anyone I have ever purchased a fitness program from, and that is the occasional unclear rep schemes. These would pop up every once in a while when you're doing alternating or semi-unilateral types of movements. For example, she has one movement that's called alternating long to short stride lunges, and it didn't really explain if it would be 8 reps per side or 8 reps total. Things like that would pop up every now and then. The next con is that modifications and alternatives are not always given for some moves that I would say are quite advanced or just high impact movements. These would be things like bottom up presses or kneel to squats. Build does include a fair amount of movements that I would consider to be advanced, and movements like this, in my opinion, really do need a step-by-step explanation of how to execute them, not just for newbies, but for anyone who's new to the movement. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have been training for years who have never done bottoms up presses. Or another movement she has in there, which she calls double swings, but I actually just call them squat swings in my own head because double swings are actually a completely different movement in the kettlebells world. In any event, some of these movements can be straight up dangerous to someone who's never attempted them before. Taking the bottoms up press as an example, that's when you're gripping a kettlebell by the handle, but the horns are down and the bottom of the kettlebell is at the top. The flat bottom is what's up top. The bottoms up press is something that can be super challenging even at a very light weight. So it's really important for people not to be prideful in the gym about that or to be ashamed to go light at first or even second or third. And again, use that free hand to protect your shoulder and your face. I just wish that had been there. And that's just one example where I kind of went way too deep into explaining how that move should be executed. But I think that more explanations like that could have been included for some of these more advanced less on the beaten path types of moves. Those are all my cons. As usual, most of my problems are with Athlete and not with the program itself. So let's move into miscellaneous thoughts. First up, this program, as usual, is designed to be done in a gym. If you don't have a gym membership, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you have a lot of equipment at home and you just have a good acquaintance with things that you can do to substitute for machines and pieces of equipment that you will not have access to. My best recommendation, though, would be to just check out Home, which is Natacha's program, which is designed to be done at home. It uses minimal equipment, mostly just resistance bands and maybe a chair. I've done a full review on it, so I'll link that up here. And for what it's worth, I think Home is actually a great program to carry into the gym should you decide to join a gym later, or you get access to a gym later, or maybe you already have gym access, because it's so easy to up the intensity of that program by just adding traditional resistance like a bar, dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever you have access to. Going back to build, I don't have access to all of the equipment that this program indicates. I do have a gym membership, but my gym just doesn't have certain things like a leg press, cable machine, whatever, because it's a CrossFit gym. So if you're in a similar situation, or maybe your gym just doesn't have a certain thing, like maybe one or two things that crop up, you may still need to be creative and semi-well versed in fitness and training to be able to come up with alternatives and solutions for the movements that you can't do as indicated in the program. You are typically on your own for coming up with suitable substitutions for movements that are very machine focused. Next miscellaneous thought, if you have knee or joint issues, this program does not have a ton of jumping, but there is some jumping. There are moves like lateral box jumps, kneels to squats, and some of those movements I simply cannot do because my knees will not have it. I don't think Natacha is even 25 yet, whereas I am in my dirty 30s. So even just watching her do some of these movements in the demos has my bad knee telling me to f all the way off. So again, these are just things to bear in mind if you do have joint issues. You can always modify. That's what I would always do. If I knew it wasn't a good look for me to do something, I would just modify, but you may not always be offered a suggestion on what to do instead. Again, you may have to come up with something on your own. Another miscellaneous thought is that the workouts are generally estimated to take 1 hour each. I found that the WODs are very often well over an hour though. If you are lifting weights that are appropriately challenging for you, you're going to need proper rest between sets, not to mention the time it takes to warm up properly. And then of course there's the aspect of unilateral movements, which always take longer, because if you're working one side at a time, it's basically taking twice as long to finish each set. 2 sets of 8 unilateral moves is the same as 2 sets of 16, basically. So yes, the minutes can actually add up on you, and I would be prepared to budget over an hour per workout, probably more in the hour 20 range. Last miscellaneous item is just an observation I made that around the 6-week mark, I detected a little bit of a deload. In particular, the leg day of that week, I remember the workout was only like 3 or so different movements, fairly high volume on those 3 movements, but still a rather short workout compared to the rest. And I just thought that that was really smart programming leading up to the final push in the last weeks of the program. I would love it if the PDF guide that came with Build had talked more about that process, just telling us more about the thought process behind the groupings of specific movements within each workout, the groupings of each workouts within each week, as well as the progression from one week or phase to the next. Essentially just the strategy of the overload and training over the course of the 12 weeks. I just think that would have been interesting to hear rather than trying to guess what's happening as you're doing the program. Then again, I think a lot of people may not care about that, so it's probably just me on this one. Whew, I've been talking a long time, but that is it. Those are my thoughts. That is my She Tried It for Natacha Océane's Build. As I said earlier, loved it, would recommend. In fact, I'm tempted to go right into another Natacha Océane program so I can just enjoy my training as much as I've been enjoying it doing Build. I still have Move and Cut Reload, and I haven't even gotten into those yet because I've been so busy with reviewing other programs, including this one. But for y'all's sake, I probably am going to switch it up and review something from someone else for my next program. And this isn't even a hint, I'm just going to tell you. The next She Tried It is going going to be one of the programs from Brett Contreras' new book. He is the glute guy. I pre-ordered his book before it even came out, and it is in my living room, but it is like 600 pages and as heavy as a dictionary, so I'm not gonna go get it. But he's got several different programs within that 700 pages, all mostly focused around building the booty because that's his brand. So one of those will be the next. She tried it. But that is plenty for today. My mouth is so dry from all this talking. So thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end, and special shout out to everyone who has joined me over on Patreon. I will be doing another live stream this Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific for my Notification Squad and Ride or Die tiers. I will put the link on Patreon Sunday morning to the private live stream. And again, I will be going live at 4 o'clock p.m. All of this information will be on Patreon as well, but clearly some of y'all don't be checking it because, to put it lightly, the last live stream was not well attended. All right, time for me to get busy editing this. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking with me to the end of this very lengthy She Tried It. These things are always just way too damn long. But because I love y'all, I want to depart one really important piece of information to you before I go. And that is to never trust anyone with a Morphe code. Bye-bye.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm going to tell you that now.